My name is Cheria, and for a living, I turn workplaces into growth spaces. This podcast is a front row seat into my own personal and professional development as I talk with inspiring people about the growth that takes place at the intersection of work and life. Welcome to Grow There with Cheria. Okay, today is a very special episode of Grow There with Cheria because, as you know, we always do rapid fire questions. And one of the questions I ask is, tell me about the best boss you've ever had. And the person coming on this show is one of my favorite bosses. And I've had incredible bosses. So to call her a favorite is high praise. She really was the first great boss I ever had. And that is my friend, Rachel Russell. And Rachel and I, we started working together. She was running the Laurel Foundation at the time. And that's an organization that runs programs for children, youth, and families affected by HIV and AIDS. And they've since expanded their mission to serve transgender and gender diverse youth. And so we worked together for that organization, working with kids, running programs, running camp programs, mentorship programs, all sorts of things like that. And that was our professional life, but we also had this whole personal life component where each of us just had a lot of hobbies and were into fashion and design and all these things. So we started lifestyle blogs together. And so sadly, those blogs have since gone to rest. But Rachel is someone who has just always been game to do creative things with me and me with her. In fact, I mentioned in the last podcast episode that I'm doing this whole 30-day villain challenge. Rachel is doing that challenge with me right now. So she's just so creative and so down. And while she spent most of her career in different roles that work with kids or that are youth focused, she's had these incredible hobbies that she's maintained. But sewing has been her longest and truest love. And she says that nothing clears her mind faster than sitting down at the sewing machine and making something from scratch. That sense of fulfillment has led her to start Stitch and Flourish, which is her business where she teaches beginners of all ages how to sew and helps them experience the same joy, confidence, and creativity that sewing has brought her. She is so creative. Once you meet her, you're going to be like, dude, I need to get a sewing machine or take out my sewing machine and sew something. And please find her, go to Stitch and Flourish, find her website. You can find her also on TikTok. You can find her on Instagram, all Stitch and Flourish. You're not going to want to miss out. I guarantee you're going to feel like, oh, maybe I should do a sewing project after we talk. Anyways, without further ado, I want to introduce you to one of my most creative, brilliant, talented friends and former boss. So it's time to grow there with Rachel Russell. Welcome to the Grow There with Cheria podcast. I'm so happy you're here, and I'm so happy to be sitting down and talking with you. Obviously, we know each other very well and worked together for many years, and we're in the trenches together working for a camp with children and family affected by HIV and AIDS. And so we have gone through so much life together. And so the intimacy that we have with one another there's just not a lot of people who share that kind of intimacy when you are doing intense work, when you're spending 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, certainly at camp, and then just day-to-day life. And you're working in circumstances where you're supporting kids in their growth and development, and anything happens, including, I don't know, challenges with kids doing incredibly, remarkably beautiful things that just move you to tears, and then like bears and crocodiles showing up to camp,
all wearing costumes.
Oh my God. It's a wonder. Anyways, it's such a special thing to be able to sit on this podcast and hear from you. And you know why we're here. I am obsessed with growth and obsessed with stories of growth that happen at the intersection of work and life. And I just want to let you dive in and tell me a story.
Yeah. So I think I want to tell you about the time when my mother died. And
Mm,
it was this experience that, it was this great loss and it touched every aspect of my life, how I showed up at work, how I showed up with my friends, what I believed in relationships. And I think before that happened, I had always described my mom's death, future possible, maybe it would never happen death as totally unsurvivable. I'm
mm,
not sure what I thought was going to happen. Maybe I thought I was going to just disappear off the planet, but it happened
mm,
and I didn't die, but I certainly was not thriving. Right.
mm,
And in the end, I was held together not by grit or toughness, but by community and by my relationship and by the people in my life. And
mm,
a lot of those people were people that I worked with at Camp
mm,
Laurel where we worked together. And so it really was this true intersection of these two things. And I think the work really gave me a structure to keep me
mm.
going, right? I'm grieving, I'm sort of unmoored from anything. And I have to show up. I have to comb my hair. I have to look presentable. I have to keep
Yeah.
going. And so having that work definitely gave me a rhythm and a flow. And it was meaningful work. So that really helped as well. And then, like I said, I had these friends who really showed up for me. So in the immediate aftermath, some of my friends that right? They literally came to town and helped me do the sort of emotional excavation of my mother's things, right? So our friend
Mm,
Meredith flew down to San Diego where my mom had lived, and we really went through all of the photo albums, all of the artifacts that she left behind and helped me
no, no.
sift through those things. And not just the things, right? The
Yeah.
emotional response that I had to discovering these things, right? I was going into this sort of inner sanctum of her space, of her room where it was forbidden, right? And now all of a sudden, not only did I have access to these things, but I was responsible for them. And so
Mm,
I kissed friend to do that and to oddly laugh through this experience and cry together and
yeah.
feel all of the emotions that you feel when you're grieving. And then Lisa, who's the medical director, she really helped me just in the process leading up to my mom's death and even after, like just answering questions about the medical thing, helping me through that piece. She opened her doors to me and let me stay in her home while I was going through this process of sifting through my mom's things. Our other friend Karen, I would be at work doing work things. We would go to camp and instead, I then needed like respite and care. So I would get on a red eye after camp and fly straight to New York and then just have a fun, silly time. And
Yeah.
so it's an interesting time to think back on because these were in many ways the saddest moments of my life. And also
Mm,
they're some of my favorite, all-time favorite memories.
oh,
Like there was this one time we needed to get boxes. Meredith and I needed to get boxes for just the stuff that we were packing up. And we went to some FedEx store and I don't know what I must have been giving off emotionally, visually, but it wasn't good. And this poor gentleman working at the store, like immediately was very clear he wanted me out of the store. It was just like a funny moment together, laughing at this experience in the FedEx store. So when we talk about these times, we laugh at these moments that were sort of dark and sad, and yet there's this
yeah.
light that is part of them as well. And I
Yeah.
think I knew I knew then that relationships were important, but it really coming out of this experience and this grief process after my mom dying, it really solidified this importance in my life for my relationships, for people, for community, for caring for each other, right? It wasn't about there's no money, there's no validation, there's nothing else I could have done to have gotten through it without having the people really there to sort of help me pick up the pieces because it really felt for a while that I didn't really know. I actually didn't know what pieces needed to be picked up. I had another friend who was calling and saying, I ordered you pizza because if
Mm,
someone asked, what do you want to eat or what do you need? I didn't know the answer to that. So my friends, they stepped in and they did a lot of those things for me, which was really incredible.
Yeah. It's wild because I know obviously some of your other friends outside of the camp and our work world were wonderful in supporting you. But when you talk about the story, camp plays, camp
Mhm.
people
Yeah.
are, and we say camp, but it was work. It was our
Yeah.
job.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Our,
Totally.
it played such a huge role in creating the support system that you
Mm.
needed in this time of your life. And work, people who we work with, now, mind you, this is a unique situation just for everyone listening because this nonprofit was basically run by volunteers. So even though we're talking about it as camp and
Mm.
talking about these volunteers who were camp counselors, they really were an extension of our team and workforce in so many ways. And when I think about the relationships that people develop in the workplace,
Mm.
we spend so much time,
Yeah.
often so much more time with the people that we work with than even the people that we live with sometimes. It feels like we spend so much more time. And in this particular place, this particular space where people were coming together
Mm.
for a high impact, meaning driven mission, what came along with that was also these kind of hearts of gold
Mm.
that even to this day, the way we support one another as friends feels timeless.
Mm.
It feels like anything could happen and someone's putting together an Excel sheet of all the needs that this person might have. And Ole, you take this. Tabasco, you take this. Ninja, you take this. These are all camp names, by the way. Uh, and it feels so organic to us because that's the kind of community we created there.
Mm.
And you talked about your mom passing one day as being an unsurvivable thing. And I wonder if you would have been able to survive it without this community.
Mm. I don't think so. I mean, I'm sure I wouldn't have, like, yes, in a sense that I would have lived, right? But there was
Yeah.
something about just the looks across the dining hall, the looks
Mm.
that I would get at a camp training when we're training volunteers, that support that happened at work was so beneficial to not just the surviving, but the moving through that and coming to the other side and feeling like I grew out of that, right? That I grew into
Yeah.
something new. And I think the things that came after that experience, it's not to say that I think it would have been impossible, but my mom dying opened up some things for me in terms of what I allowed into my life that I
Hmm.
maybe wouldn't have been able to do at the same time,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. I also just wonder if, because obviously, yes, you likely would have survived, but would you have been thriving or even not just the community, but the job itself? If
Yeah.
you were working in the field that you were working in before getting into nonprofit,
Yeah.
how would you have survived it then? And I'm asking this question, I guess, because I'm coming back to this intersection of work and
Yeah.
life. And I think when we think about where we choose to work
Mm.
and why we choose to work there, it matters when you zoom out to look at
Yeah.
your life holistically. And a
Totally.
lot of people work in jobs that they don't really care about with people who they don't really care about or trust.
Yeah.
And when life hits you hard, they don't have
Mhm.
that additional safety net, that additional support system. And that can be so beneficial. And I'm such a huge proponent of making friends at work. I talk about it a
Yeah.
lot. You know, I used to have friends that would not make friends at work on intentionally. They wanted to be
Mhm.
boundaried, and I respect that as well. I'm not
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't, but I also, because time and time again, I've seen that making friends at work can actually be enormous for your sense of community. And can be so useful if you have great people that you can open yourself up to. So I think both the field that you were in that there was also a mission keeping you going.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting because within 4 to 6 months after my mom dying, and I'm still grieving, I'm certainly not all the way through this experience. I clearly was doing something right at work because I ended up getting promoted to be camp director, associate director of the organization. And let's just say that was not exactly the smoothest, most natural transition for me, coming in as a new leader and not really quite knowing what it meant to be a leader or how to um, inspire people or how to encourage people and to engage people. And so I think I went in with a more like control mindset, and that was
Mhm.
not my finest moment. So much so that there were as anonymous letters that were written about how I was doing the job. And again, it was really this intersection of work and life, right? I'd built these relationships at work. And so on the organizational side, I was really supported. So Margot, the founder and the CEO of the organization, she certainly talked to me about the letters that had come to her, but totally 100% supported me. So she
Mm.
got me a coach. So I had a coach that I was meeting with monthly. I went to leadership training, management training. I really felt like the organization was supporting me in my growth as a leader.
Mhm.
And even
Yeah.
with our friends, obviously the letters weren't from everyone, but my friends were there to help me process that and to get through that. And
Yeah.
I think it was sort of, from the personal side of coming through my mom's death and surviving that, and then also getting the support on the organizational level. It really helped me step into this new space as a leader at the organization so that I was able to do
Yeah.
that successfully. And I really learned about how to approach managing people in the
Yeah.
organization and doing it with care and love, and that it's a really relational experience.
Mm.
And I imagine I probably would have gotten the job regardless of whether my mom had died or not. And maybe I would have handled it a little bit better if I weren't sort of still in the middle of the grief process. But I think having survived that loss told me a little bit about myself and what I was capable of.
Mm. I think that's such a good point and props that you're giving to Margot for offering support,
Mhm.
because I think that one of the things that we are not good at really anywhere, but certainly not in the workplace, is creating grief fluent spaces.
Right.
And when you think about it, at any given point in time, people are grieving all over the workplace. They're grieving the loss of
Right.
someone in their life. They're grieving the divorce that they're going through. They're grieving chronic illness issues, grieving their parents that they're taking care of that are coming to the end of their life. They're grieving, oh my gosh, I can't even think about how many women are grieving not being able to get pregnant and
Right.
having miscarriages. There's grief all over the workplace. And many managers don't know how to speak the language of grief, and not in a way that oversteps, but in a way that's supportive and says, hey, I know we're at work. I know you have a job to do. I know that you also are bringing your whole self here, and I want to support you to be all you want to be here. And what is going to make you feel good, let me figure out how to help you to succeed, because that will make you feel good if you're choosing to be here and you're wanting to be part of this. And so I think that while there's many other elements to being fluent in grief, I think one of them that is just a good shout out, I think, to any people leader is to start thinking about what people actually need
Mm.
to put more energy into things that feel productive for them, especially when they're grieving. That can't be forced, but for you, that was a challenge by choice. You wanted to step up and step
Yeah.
into this role, and you were ready for that and supported to do that. And what didn't happen was pity and
Mm.
just saying, "Oh, she'll figure it out eventually." No, you were actually given the tools and
Yeah.
resources to succeed, and I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, and the other piece of that is that it's sort of failure in that time with really figuring out how to lead this organization and the camps, that it was okay,
Yeah,
right? It was okay that I
yeah,
had failed, and it was, "Okay, now let's try something different." And that was
yeah.
a really empowering
Oh my gosh.
experience to have
Yeah, that's
as
massive.
a new leader. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
massive. I wanna come back to that in a second.
Okay.
I'm curious if you were to give advice
Mm.
to leaders in the workplace,
Mm.
any advice of any kind, but based on how your growth happened at this intersection of work and life, what would it be? What advice
Yeah.
would you give to people leaders?
I think it's a lot of what you just said. One thing that really stands out, I think I've told you this before. One of the things that stands out to me from probably the very first management training I went through is the facilitator handed everybody a piece of paper with a list of maybe 20 things that were things that employees possibly cared about or were motivating. And he asked us to rank those in order from most important to least important. I think we were all ranking like salary, prestige, title, those
Mm,
types of things as the top number one, number two, number three, motivating, most important things for employees. And I don't know, this was probably from some sort of research study or something, but the number one thing that will always stick with me was that employees want help with their personal problems. And I think
mm,
that was verbatim. And it's not that it's not that people want managers and businesses to solve their problems, but they want the space to be able to be human, I think, and to
yeah,
have the opportunity to take the time if they need it, to fail and to get back up from that, right? They want to feel really supported as human beings, not just as
yeah,
employees of the business.
yeah. It's just so important. It's one of those things that so often you hear the language of bring your whole self to work,
Mm.
but bringing your whole self to work means bringing all of your humanity,
Mm.
not just your humanity, but all of the humanness that surrounds you that impacts who you are. And so I think that people leaders being able to tune their ear to the emotional intelligence that it takes to see their people as people.
Yeah.
And again, know that there's a job to get done. Of course, there is. There's a mission at stake. There are deliverables and outcomes that need to be met. But all those things can be done when we see our humanness as a superpower and we support the whole human, not just one section of their life, which is work.
Totally. Yeah.
So I think that's really powerful.
I think that my journey took another kind of swing that coming from this growth in the leadership space at work, then feeling that success, feeling that growth helped propel this next phase of my personal life, which is this really personal journey of understanding who I was and where I came from. I was an adopted child really young, and I didn't really know who my parents were. And I think one, surviving my mom's death, having this incredible support from my friends and many of whom were colleagues, and then succeeding in this work experience as a leader, those two things combined really allowed me to explore this piece of my life. So by this time, we're
Mm,
working together, we're colleagues, you and I, and definitely was a challenge because it's a lot of emotional excavation that I'm doing, understanding who these people were. It started with just genealogy. I
yeah,
was on ancestry.com, figuring out who people were and then getting in touch with actual family members and meeting them. And that was
yeah.
at the same time, it was incredible. And it was also hard and stressful. And I feel like one moment I really remember with you, I don't know if you remember this, but I was a little much because I was waiting for, like, DNA results to find out about my dad, and was this person really the person that I thought he was? And I was not bringing my best self. And you came into my office nervous, and you were like, "Rachel, can I talk to you?" And you were so gracious and kind in giving me this feedback, but saying, "I need you to step up, and I need you to cool it a little bit because I need something a little different." And
Mm,
I remember it wasn't the greatest feeling, but at the same time, I was so grateful for your honesty. And so that was something that we were able to work through and talk through, and I was able to adjust. And I also felt,
yeah.
okay, I'm doing something right here if you're able to come to me in person, right into my office and share this. You did not have to write an anonymous letter. So there was a beauty for that, of feeling like this
Mhm.
relationship is so strong that you could come to me and share that with me while I'm going
Yeah.
through
Yeah.
this journey of understanding who I am, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I do not remember the exact incident. I don't
Yeah.
but I remember that being a tough time. I remember tough in the sense that there was a lot at stake for you in this time emotionally. And you're exactly right. I did feel this psychological safety to come and
Very.
I train people in psychological safety, so I would say I felt challenger safety. I felt willing to come in
Mm.
and challenge what was happening in the culture of the team at the moment, challenge you, even if I was nervous, even if I was not knowing. Actually, I it's funny because I never even if I was nervous, I'm not like that kinda nervous. I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
I
yeah.
was just more, "We'll see how this goes because 'cause
Oh,
I'm gonna have to give her some tough
yeah.
feedback." And but I don't remember being, like, nervous that you weren't gonna handle it. Like, I never yeah, to your point, you only when you speak up, it's because you feel safe to speak up. That's the
Wow.
point.
Wow.
Even if it's a little uncomfortable, that's why you do it. So you had truly and, frankly, I think you'd done a lot of work before I got there. And also, I think it was an iron sharpens iron kind of situation. I feel like we had a
Mm.
the professional maturity was there so that I can say other times where you challenged me
Mm.
in ways that I needed to be challenged. That and obviously you were my boss, so that was also appropriate, but I just feel like we had a very special way of communicating and
Mm.
working together.
Wow. Yeah, when I think back to that time, I feel like we made each other better, and
Yeah.
a huge part of that was because we were friends, right? Like, I was your boss and I had hired you, and that was the dynamic in the office, but at the same time, we built this very strong relationship built on mutual trust
Mhm.
and mutual admiration. So when I look back on these things shifting back and forth between where the personal or the work is more important, but in the end, it really felt like they were fueling each other, and success in
Mm.
one area was really made possible by success in the other area. It's really hard to sort of I can't really separate them. Or I think about the
Yeah.
show
Yeah.
Severance. I don't know if you've seen Severance.
I'm like the only person in America who
Yeah, I
hasn't
feel like
watched
you
it.
need to see it. I feel like it's like
And
the
everybody tells me I
yeah, oh my gosh, it's
especially
like
need to
literally
watch.
it's especially in light of the conversation we're having, right? Because the
Yeah.
conceit of the story is that people are surgically, mentally separated from work. So it's like a different version of them goes to work and a different person lives their life at home and they never remember
Mhm.
the things that happen in either space. And of course, that's deeply disturbing and dystopian to think about. But when I think about the experiences that I've had, these things are just really inextricably linked
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, in terms of the growth and the challenge and the joy that comes out of living a life.
I feel that way too, and I'm feeling a little existential in the moment because I feel like there's just so much evidence that that's where so much growth
Mm,
comes from. And yet I'm really aware this modern world that we live in, that this is the way
yeah.
we have to live our lives, But I don't feel like I live in rejection of that. I feel like
Mhm.
I live in pursuit of finding the wisdom in that. And so when we bifurcate work and life, it makes me a little sad because it feels like missed opportunity for what ultimately is personal growth, no matter whether it's professional or life related.
Yeah.
And so and there's many ways that you can grow yourself, but there's something really unique about that dance between work and
Mhm.
life. And and I think if we're willing to keep our eyes open to it, we realize that it's where some of our proudest moments come out of. Our proudest moments of growth are usually in these spaces where you can't actually separate them.
Yeah. Absolutely. Not all environments are great. Not all work environments are supportive or give care to people. And I think that the stories that we're talking about, right, at Camp Laurel happened because that was a really special space to be in and to work in and to live in. So I just want to say that because I think sometimes it's a little
Yeah.
bit harder to have that feeling and that experience about your work when you don't feel great about a lot of what else is happening in your.
Yeah, exactly. I'm always aware of the caveats and the give and takes and that it's not black and white. And yet I just think every single experience we have in this life, every single one of them is an opportunity to grow. And I don't mean that in a growth obsessive way, even though I often use those exact terms that I'm obsessed with growth. I don't mean it in like a must be better, must keep growing, must. I mean it in a every single living, breathing thing on this planet has one job.
Mm,
And that only job is to grow and die, frankly. Both those things. That's all everything that lives has to do. Grow until the point where it's no longer meant to grow and then it dies. And I find that so beautiful that every single experience we have is an opportunity for us to see a new part of ourselves,
yeah.
to come alive to a new way of being. And so you're talking about here is having gone through tragedy with your mom
Mhm.
to then going into this new journey of discovering who your biological parents are and putting the pieces of your life together whilst also working in community and having impact and seeing how that community supports you as you grow and gain more understanding of who you are and the way that ultimately shored up your foundation,
Mhm.
I think is how you are now becoming more of who you are as we speak.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like the growth is like an expansion, expansiveness of ourselves where we really can be bolder. It's like you were saying, it's not about being better or like numbers or measurement, but it's about stepping into exactly what you're saying, stepping into who you really are in a bold
Yeah.
way and embracing all of the aspects of yourself and loving yourself no matter what.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
still working on that, but yes, that's the journey.
Well, that's one of my other favorite things about our friendship, and especially the last year,
Mm.
was Rachel and I went through The Artist's Way together. If you don't know what The Artist's Way is, it's a book by Julia Cameron,
Hammer.
and it's been around for like 30 years, maybe 30 years plus. And it's a 12-week process of getting in touch with your inner
Mm.
artist. And we would meet every week and we go through this book. And so much of reclaiming your inner artist is
Mm.
about learning to love yourself and certainly learning to love the artist. And I think that one of the activities you have to do every week is an artist date. And essentially you're taking the artist in you out on a date. You're showing them love, you're showing them attention. And I think going through that with you this year was such a beautiful journey. But that process of being in community with one another, very intimately having these conversations about what it means to love ourselves through
Yeah.
life and grow ourselves through life and looking at it through the lens of an artist, I think was really powerful.
Yeah, I loved the artist play was such an interesting experience. It was this like formalized conversation facilitated by this book, right? That we had
Mhm.
together each week, which is not a normal way to get together with your friends. Like in some ways, it was more of in service or a professional development experience that you'd have at work, but we brought it into our friendship and into our
Yeah.
lives as a way to just explore different areas. And I thought that was cool in that way. And also amazing to deepen our friendship through that experience.
Yeah.
And we both talked about our businesses and what we're doing. And it was, I think, the piece about this, like the inner artist, is something that I'm deeply interested in. I've launched this business to teach sewing, which is my favorite hobby for myself. And I've gotten personally so much out of that experience in terms of knowing myself and appreciating my body. I wear dramatic and bold things like this because of my sewing and because of that
Mhm.
creative exploration that I'm able to go on through sewing. And I just want to share that with people. I love the opportunity to get off of the computer and get off of our cell phones. I'm teaching 26th to ninth graders how to sew, and they're learning how to make pajama shorts and make scrunchies and do all of these different projects. And I actually asked them on the first day, some of them had a little bit of experience sewing, and I'd ask them, what do you enjoy about sewing? What do you really get out of that? And they shared a lot of the things that I, as an adult grown woman, will say. One of them
Yeah.
said, oh,
Yeah.
it means I'm not doom scrolling. They talked about the sound of the machine, like the hum of the sewing
Mm.
machine, and how that just brought like a sense of calm over them. They talked
Yeah.
about it was a great thing to do when they're bored. It's an opportunity to really do something with your hands and to make something. And I think in a culture where we are so focused on consumption, whether that's shopping or just consuming content on our phones, it's so grounding to be able to really make
Yeah.
something, a dress, a shirt, a placemat, whatever it is that you want to make, right? You have this opportunity to explore. And I think crafts like sewing or activities like sewing also allow you to fail safely. One of the things that
Yeah.
I love about sewing is that there is one tool, it's called the seam ripper, and it's an integral part of sewing. And I love that there is literally an undo tool in sewing that allows you to just pick apart your stitches and start over or fix the mistake that you made. It's like built into the
Yeah.
process. It's just a
Yeah.
understood aspect of creating something with your hands when you're sewing is that you are going to make mistakes and that's okay.
Yeah. I said I was gonna come back to this because I wanted to come back to what you talking about failure earlier, and the
Yeah.
seam ripper analogy, I think, is so perfect.
Mm.
One, because I sew a little bit for those of you listening, but very minimally. I was very crafty when I was a kid. I never really learned how to sew, but I would go into the locker room before school, and Judy, who worked in the locker room,
Oh,
had a sewing machine, and I would bring in material and I'd create a shirt for myself for the day or a backpack for the day. And so I used to love to sew, but I would bring my own seam ripper with me because, yes, it's
yeah.
just part of the
Yeah.
process. And
Oh,
when you're
goodness.
sewing and you don't have a
Yeah.
seam ripper, it's terrible.
Yeah.
But to your point, it's such a perfect analogy because we don't have it's hard to think of other analogies that show in work. I'm constantly talking to people about failure, but there's no theme ripper in the workplace.
Mm.
There's
Yeah.
not that equivalent. And I'm
Yeah.
always trying to get people to create the equivalent
Mm.
of the seam ripper in the workplace. For example, I want you to have, when I used to have a podcast at one of the organizations I worked with, and part of that podcast was the epic fail segment of the podcast. And it was like, we're looking for the failures. It's part of if we do a podcast and we don't have an epic fail, we don't have something we need to use the seam ripper on, then we're not trying hard enough. That our head's not in the game, you know? And so I love the analogy of a seam ripper. I think it's so brilliant. I think you should keep preaching the gospel of failure through the seam ripper because it's really,
Yep.
but okay, tell us more now that we're finally talking about your new venture, which is not so new anymore, but you've been doing this and teaching, and it's so cool. I'd love for you to just share more about what this
Yeah.
world of sewing is for you that you're wanting to share with the world.
Yeah. I think the other big piece for me is, yes, there's this skill, right? I'm teaching this practical skill of sewing. You can make anything that you want once you have the skill, but it's really about connection for me, connection to others, especially when you're learning in community with other students, or even at least with your teacher, right? Getting feedback in the ongoing process of creating something, connection with yourself, understanding who you are. And whenever the seam ripper does come out, I always cheer on that moment and remind my students that's part of the process. And it's also an opportunity to connect with that creative expression, because you really
Mhm.
are putting something out, you're creating something with your own hands, and that to me is the ultimate part about sewing, where you go on this
Yeah.
journey, this process of creating something you aren't necessarily sure how it's gonna turn out, especially the first time you make something, and then you do, and you're able to look at it, and the best part in class is when students finish their project and they say, "I made this," and you just have that
Mm.
pride and that joy from that creation. That is very cool.
Yeah. It's such a tangible thing. And I think so often I'm bringing it back to the workplace.
Mm.
So often we don't have that moment for ourselves that I made this moment.
Yeah.
And even if we have it, we move on to the next thing so quickly. And I think it's just such a beautiful thing to create something with your own hands and to be able to wear it, to be able to wear just that alone, to be able to put on and wear with pride something that you made.
Mhm.
And oftentimes at work, we don't get to do that. We
Mm.
don't get to, you know, put that landing page on that we created and
Yeah,
wear it around and show people, look at this
totally.
thing. Of course, people
Yeah.
go to visit, but there's something about sewing and creating where you're able to let it become part of your
Mhm.
identity. And I think it's just a really cool thing. But I'm so excited about your business, and I will obviously let people know how to find you. But
Yeah.
I think it's something the world also needs right now.
Mm.
When the election did not go the way I wanted it to go,
Yeah.
I did not know what to do. I felt like my brain cells just kinda evaporated,
Yeah.
but I pulled out my sewing machine that
Word.
day for the first time in
Yeah.
years, and I just knew I needed to make something, and what I actually did was took apart an old dress and
Right.
made it into pajamas, and I remember feeling like this process is an act of faith that I can believe that I can take something that I actually don't like. I didn't like the dress, it never looked good on me.
Mm.
I can take something that I don't like, and I can figure out how to make it something new. And for me, that meant something in that moment. And so I think you're doing incredible work to help people create and discover themselves in the process, and also to discover the beauty of creating a community. I think that's really cool.
Smart.
Well, listen, I want to do rapid fire, and we're going to do our very best to be rapid fire about our rapid fire question. So fill in the blank. Growth is,
Ooh, being brave.
love it. What was the very first thing you realized you were good at as a kid?
Oh, like crafting. We would always go to the
Craft.
store. I'm gonna start a new craft today.
Love it. Also, You were good at a lot of things like roller skating.
Oh, yes. Yes, I took roller skating lessons, but not like speed roller skating. I did figure skating, but on roller skates.
What I wouldn't give. I really wanna find someone who will teach me figure skating, roller skating. But first I have to get okay at just regular roller
Yeah.
skating. What was your first job?
I was a work study in the electrical engineering building at USC. And the electrical engineers never really talked to me until the copy machine stopped working. And I knew I could work that thing forwards and backwards. That was my first job and that's a memory that sticks with me from that.
Love it. Who is the best boss you've ever had?
Mm. Not exactly a boss, but Lisa, who was the medical director at Camp
Mhm.
Laurel, was a huge supporter of mine. I always describe her as my mentor in life. Like she was my mentor at work, but she was also my mentor in life. And she taught me what the real meaning of integrity was just by her
Mm.
setting the example. And I think a lot of her quiet leadership and her quiet role modeling of how to be in the workplace was an influence on me and an influence on my desire to grow and to change. We talked a lot about all the different things that I was going through, but I think her belief in me, her seeing me, helped me take those first steps. And so I'm always
Yeah.
grateful to her for that.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing. What's something you're trying to learn right now?
Mm. How to start and run a business
Amen.
bravely
I fe
and with my whole heart.
I love that. What is something you're trying to unlearn?
Mm. Trying to unlearn listening to that voice in my head telling me all the things that I'm doing wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotta put that little one on timeout.
Yeah.
Name a book or a movie that changed your life.
Mm. I think I would say The Year of Magical Thinking by Joan
Mm.
Didion, which was a book about her grief and her loss of her husband and daughter, or maybe that happened after the book. But it was just a great text to read while grieving.
Yeah. When growth feels good, how do you celebrate?
I'm still working on this celebration part, I think. But talking to friends, celebrating with friends is the
Yeah.
way for sure.
And when growth feels hard, how do you take care of yourself?
Mm. I think talking to friends is the most important piece. I've found that when I keep it inside, whatever isn't feeling good kind of festers. But as soon as I can speak it, it's sort of
Mhm.
whatever difficulty, whatever the feelings are that I'm feeling about it, just sort of dissipate. So just
Yeah.
speaking it out loud and getting care from friends.
Yeah. It neutralizes it.
Yeah, exactly.
What would your 8-year-old self say about the life you're living now?
You would love that I figured out sewing because I really wanted to do that as a kid and just that was like the one craft I didn't do. But she'd also be real mad that I did not have a proper Christmas village.
Ah, yes, the Christmas village.
Yeah.
Last but not least, when you grow all the way up and you leave this life, what is it that you hope to congratulate yourself on?
I think I already used this answer, but being brave
Mhm.
and doing all the things like never, living with no regrets.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Rach, you're one of a kind. I'm so grateful we shared this life together.
Me too. Me too, friend.